to Book 101 Review. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years. And today I have my special guest. He is an architect of alignment, helping leaders build cultures that scale. No other than Mr. Matthew Pearson.
Morning. How are you?
I'm fabulous, Mr. Matthew, and welcome to Book 101 Review. And can you please introduce more about yourself than a mess?
Sure. I have a unique background that cuts across almost 25 years between executive management and operations, investment banking, and buy-side M&A and corporate strategy. Along the way, I've chatted with hundreds, if not thousands, of CEOs and executives, and investigated businesses as well, and have seen the good, the bad, and the ugly along the way, which is part of what framed my opinion and some of the subjects we're going to be talking about today.
Definitely, Mr. Matthew Pearson. Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. And today, let's talk about alignment is culture. Here's why most important thing is what got most wrong.
That's
How
right.
do Yes. So how do you say alignment is culture rather than alignment shapes culture?
Well, it's a great question. What I've noticed in my efforts both to run and build and scale companies, as well as in seeing other companies that I've investigated from an acquisition perspective, um, culture obviously goes a long way in impacting the efficacy and the growth and the scale of a business. You can have the best ideas in the world and the best product, but if you're not able to have the team to help grow and drive that, it will fail. And obviously that's a commonality across a lot of investment VCs, venture capitalists, for example, put a lot of weight on talent and management. But it's more than just a leadership team, it's how the rest of the company operates. What's happened, what we've gotten wrong to your comment around culture, is over the years, it's a lot of business books, a lot of behavior around organizational design, around how to approach systems and processes, has defaulted to what I would say is a common sized or even a copying effort. We look at, for example, companies that are designated best places to work. And we say, well, if they've done something to be the best place to work, I should be as well. And they copy those efforts. But just because someone is a best place to work, a company has achieved that goal, doesn't necessarily mean it's going to work for you. We've common sized this view, these attributes. Business books often say, I've talked to 500 CEOs, I've investigated 1,000 companies. Here are the common attributes. And those are interesting things to understand. But the application, the applicability to your company, to your culture, to the way you prefer to do, doesn't necessarily equate. And so, what ends up happening when you do that is you create a one sided view of culture, which is the company's own perspective, and you've forgotten around and you've common sized it into this broad terminology that may not really apply to how you choose to run your business. When that happens, you have a disconnect between what your employees think, what your customers may think, and how you actually operate internally. And that causes difficulties, that causes churn, that causes dissatisfaction and disengagement from your employees. So that's what we've gotten wrong. We really need to shift how we view culture into a new way of thinking.
What's the most dangerous misconception about alignment in organization today?
Well, I think the most dangerous is the fact that because we've made it one sided, that companies feel as though alignment is the employee having to then, I say, chameleon themselves into the company's way of doing. And so as a result, the employee is changing their own personal belief systems, their own preferred ways of doing, just to fit a job. And that's not healthy, right? That doesn't come across well. People don't necessarily enjoy that type all environments just for the sake of a job. To me, alignment, when I say alignment is culture, alignment's a two-way street. It is, in short, the matching of the ways of doing of the employee with the ways of doing of the company. And when those two things align, you have great culture. And when you don't align, then you obviously don't enjoy that environment. There are plenty of people I've talked to who've worked at places designated best place to work who didn't like working there. How does that happen, right? How do you get two people in two different experiences who don't like it? How do employees get disengaged? One of my favorite cliche statements I have is that employees don't start their first day disgruntled. In fact, most everyone comes in with an excitement around what they're going to do and what they're going to achieve. Correspondingly, every person who's ever interviewed for a job, no hiring manager has ever said this place has bad culture, right? Every company has great culture. That's what they say. Except research will tell you that almost 50% of employees quit in the first 18 months. So this common sized view of culture, of organizational design, it's not working. We have to do better. We have to understand from an employee perspective our own ways of doing, our own preferred specialities around how the working environment that gives us our best self. And companies have to better understand their role in actually having a intentionally and openly communicated way of designing that business so that they can match the employees to that ways of doing. Now that might sound hard, right? You've got companies, people who are listening saying, geez, I'm a leader of a business that has 10 employees, 100, 100,000 employees. How am I going to match all those people, all those unique ways of doing into one way? And that's what's caused this misalignment. That's what's caused everyone to get this broad view of self. And so what we end up doing is I ended up stepping back and saying, I think we can do better than this amorphous way of doing. I think we can do better in terms of intentionally designing culture, in intentionally creating alignment so that we can affect a better corporate environment. And that's what I've built in a book that's forthcoming. I'm working on publishing it. You can learn more about it at townsquare-advisors.com. The book is called The Culture of Alignment. What I have proposed is that culture can be intentionally designed. It can be intentionally constructed. What culture is something I've termed constrained independence. And constrained independence is the known degree to which an employee can action their own ideas. It's not binary, it's a square, some might call it a box, that they can play within. Why is that important? It's important because when you have all employees in this box, and that box I'll get into is that can take varying size, when you constrain that independence, that freedom to think in a known and intelligently communicated way, employees trust each other. They might make micro decisions, which allows them to better to have an impact on the business. They don't have to ask questions every single time, so they can actually work with a greater degree of speed. And all those things create loyalty. And that speed, that ability to have a more loyal and higher retention rate with employees will create scale, will create growth, will drive performance from your organization. And that's what we have to get back to. That's why culture is alignment. It's alignment, better alignment between the employee and the company's ways of doing.
Mr. Matthew, how does misalignment silently sabotage even high performing teams?
Well, what happens when you don't do this, right? When you don't intelligently create, and I'll get into the construct of how you constrain independence. There's a couple ways in which companies unintentionally sabotage themselves, to use your words. One is they don't actually have a fully complete square. When that happens, you've left voids in your operating procedures, in your communications, in your identity, in your feedback loops. It causes employees to then fill the gap themselves because they have to have some borders. So you can't have just what I would call unconstrained independence. In the world, Daniel, if you went to work somewhere, you don't have absolute freedom to act any way you want. That'd be chaos. To maintain a level of performance, companies put in this level of constraint. They put in guardrails to ensure quality of delivery of service and expectation around product. If you don't complete the square, then employees basically will make up that variance. They'll fill the gap, and that may not be uniform, and that can be unsettling and upsetting. You also potentially can have what I call mini squares, or what was commonly known as fiefdoms, where you have varying degrees of performance by function or by department. And I've seen this in real life where we had a department where had to go report every day to work 5 days a week, and everyone else in the company were only reported to work 1 or 2 days a week. And so these people in the finance department were like, why am I here every single day? Everyone else has a hybrid system, but this one function, the manager said, no, I expect everyone to be there. And it caused all kinds of friction, and some people were somewhat upset. So that's an example where you have varying levels of standard in a company that isn't communicated and is allowed to continue, that creates friction. And that sounds, it's a simple example, but there's a lot more that with fiefdoms that causes that kind of disruption in the office.
Mr. Matthew, let's talk about diagnosing misalignment. What is the subtle signs that the team is pretending to be aligned?
Well, I think what you're going to what you see is when you have misalignment, there's a couple things that happen. When you have the fiefdoms, when you have an incomplete square, and it starts to drift, you get culture drift. Is you start to it starts to show up in high employee departure rates. Performance can decline. So executives will start to say, "Geez, why are we slowing in sales? Why is our delivery response time slowing?" Because you start to get disengagement. So your performance metrics will start to erode. You might see things on public views like Glassdoor, you know, anecdotal things that people say, "Hey, I wouldn't really work there." That's kind of a little bit of chaotic environment, and it might take some. And what catches people by surprise because it happens slowly. But it's really hard. Like any reputational risk, it's really hard to come back from some of those that commonality because in the world of business, everyone knows everyone who's worked somewhere. And when people look at jobs, they go, "Oh yeah, no, I know someone who used to work there. It was a little bit chaotic of an environment, and the best people don't come forward." And so your hiring manager will say, "Geez, we're not really getting the talent that I expected to get that we had years ago paying attention to us." And it's because you've got these issues. The reason the square management system works as a diagnostic is it's two-way. It's set up for executives, but it should be read by individuals as well, so they better understand their own partialities. The system is four sides to the square. Each side has 10 elements. The first side is identity. That's who we are as a company. That's how your organization defines itself. It's your mission, it's your values, it's your brand, core beliefs. The key question for executives: do our staff and our customers understand what we stand for and why? Why does that matter? And in culture drift, product to mission drift happens all the time, where people launch a product or they acquire something that doesn't quite make sense, and it causes stress. The second side is instruction. How do we operate? That's the clarity and consistency of expectations. Um, you know, it is onboarding protocols, it's training and knowledge transfer. The key question here is: are roles, expectations, are processes clear and scalable? That's how you get many fiefdoms, when people don't really have the same uniform approach. Intercommunication is the third side. This is what most everyone thinks culture is. It's your ping pong table in the lobby. It's your happy hours on Thursdays, but it's just one side of the square. How do people interact? How's your organizational hierarchy structure? What's your meeting cadence? Where do people report? There's so much more to intercommunication than just the ping pong table. But intercommunication is important because it sets up how information flows through a company. So is information flowing in a way that drives clarity and trust would be the key question for executives there. And then lastly, to pull all together is information feedback. This is how we improve as a company. This is performance measurements. How is that performance measurement shared? Is it used to evolve? How are your feedback loops designed? The key question here is: are we learning and adapting fast enough to stay competitive? Every side has 10 elements, as I said, and in the book, and especially online, you can go to townsquare-advisors.com and actually take the full 40-point methodology. You will learn how to deliver what I call a high degree of constraint and a light level of constraint to affect the proper scale and an approach that's best fit for your company. And I'll step back and give you an example of, well, like, what is a high level of constraint? What's a light level of constraint?
How do you distinguish between healthy debate and toxic misalignment?
Well, healthy alignment is when everyone's inside the square, or most everyone in your company is inside the square. That's healthy alignment because then everyone is on the same page related to expectations across the four sides. Toxic misalignment is when you have the aforementioned incomplete square, or or you have many, fiefdoms, and you have chaos between departments. Um, I would argue there's actually no correct culture, right? The correct culture is the one that works for your company and matches to those employees. And everyone should have their own understanding. Again, it's not binary. It's usually a box. There has to be degrees of variance because you can't be perfect. But toxic cultures are when you have very massively varying degrees of expectation around all four of those sides in different parts of the company, and you end up with chaos as a result.
Why do mission statements often fail to create a real alignment, Mr. Matthew?
I'm sorry, can you ask that question again?
Why some misalignment are not real attained by the goal of the
Oh,
company?
yeah. Why is misalignment happen? How does it not come together fully? Um, Usually this happens because companies don't have the constitution to stick to what they said they would do. You get what we call culture drift. Um, it's sometimes hard to stay completely focused on what you did and what you said you would do, and that's why the feedback loop, the fourth eye, is so important because it ensures adherence to the system. But most often, companies make exceptions, and those exceptions are what cause some of that misalignment. The great example here would be a salesperson who is a star performer when it comes to their ability to sell, but their behavior does not map to corporate culture. They might be well outside operating norms, but no one wants to let that person go because of their impact on the financial performance of the company. Even though that person is a strong performer, I'd argue that that one person does more to damage the business than help it, because what employees see is, hey, it doesn't really matter how you do. It just matters what you sell. And no one really cares about culture here because they've allowed Jeff or Lisa or Tim to behave in such a way, and no one's checked it. And so there's a degree to which that drift, that allowance to deviate from performance causes problems. You have to, as a company, executives have to stick to what they said they do and realize that not everyone fits the square. And that's okay. It is better to have everyone in the square than to have some people outside of it still in the company. Moreover, as individuals, you've got to know more about who you are. Go online on townsquare-advisors.com and take the free quiz. There's one for individuals, there's one for executives, and that is going to allow you to better understand who you are and the environments that you work well in. People I've known who've taken this test, they said one thing to me. I kind of understood a little bit about me, but I took this quiz and I really learned a lot more about maybe where I should work, and it's helped them change their working environment, their communication, and their tone to better affect their own success. So it's important to really have both sides know who they are and understand how to work through that.
Mr. Matthew, as helping leaders to build culture, what are your short term and long term goals?
Short-term goals is I'd love to people to start to understand how this is really the right way to run a company. Um, it doesn't, and the key thing here is that it's not a forced system. It is unique to each company. The methodology is meant to be actionable almost immediately, and you can go online and take the 40-point exam methodology and really better understand how to construct yourself in a way that's going to achieve goals. It's a great diagnostic tool. Here's why: if you go on and you have your executives take this, your senior level, your middle, and your frontline management take it, there is a score for each side of the square, and you will see immediately the variances in each eye across the levels of management. And when you do that, you will then immediately know where operationally you've got a problem, and that diagnostic tool is really helpful in getting quick fixes around how you can then optimize your plan. Moreover, for startups and founders who maybe have great IP but really haven't understood how to build a company, you can use this tool to understand the systems you need to input to create a high performing organization. And you should do that with your colleagues, the founding team, to really help you grow in the right way. That's why this is better than I think most every other book that I've read around business. It is not an effort to tell you how to do or copy what someone else did for success. It is an effort to help you understand how you are going to succeed in your own company. And that's the difference here. It's about you, it's about your company, it's about your employees. There is no right way, there's just your way. And when you have a complete system, regardless of what those contracts are, that's better than no system, as we've talked about.
Good luck to your goals, Mr. Matthew, and looking forward for more success. And what would be your piece of advice for those people out there want to be like you?
I think my piece of advice is just to get out there and go do it. Take the diagnostic. Go online at townsquares.com, townsquare-advisors.com, and learn more about your own preferred way of doing, and then learn about how you can create your own box. There is no correct way. I actually had AI build what they take the survey and build it. You know, constraint comes in many forms. It can be very broad and light, or it can be heavily constrained and tight. Um, some people like both environments. You cannot put someone who has a heavy constraint preference In a light constrained environment, they'll suffocate. Same with the person who wants a loose environment, and you put them in a rigid one, and they'll suffer as well. Both sides have to understand how they prefer to work for this to achieve the optimal outcome, to achieve that alignment. So take the time to learn about you, and let's be honest about our operating characteristics. Let's be honest about where we want to work instead of changing who we are just to fit in for a job. It's not healthy. Let's get back to creating optimal structures and optimal environments for everyone, both sides, the employee and the company, to succeed.
Mr. Matthew, thank you so much for that advice. And can you please recommend a book or books that influence your journey?
Yes, I'd love to recommend a book. One of the best books that I've read lately is called The Pivot Year. It sits on my desk as a constant reminder. Each page is broken down to one idea per day. Each page is an idea around how you can improve yourself. It's been very motivational for me. It's inspired me to do more with my own work, with my own book is forthcoming publication. That's what's helped me better understand how and motivate me to achieve. And I think everyone got to get out. You just got to get out there. Everyone says it, get out there and do it. But until you start doing it, the satisfaction that, everyone needs a little bit of motivation. That book really helped me. The Pivot Year, great book.
Thank you for that recommended book, Mr. Matthew. And beyond productivity, what unexpected metrics improve when alignment does?
I'm sorry, can you ask the question again?
Beyond productivity, what unexpected metrics improve when alignment does?
Yeah, when you have alignment, again, you get faster moving employees because they can make micro decisions. You have more loyal employees because they trust each other to work inside the framework. You have people who are more connected to the operation because because they can make decisions, they feel like they have an influence on an outcome. So, and everyone knows that it's more costly to hire a new employee than it is to retain and train an existing one. So, when you have a loyal and fast moving team, an aligned team, you're able to scale faster, to grow, to respond to market dynamics, and that's what's going to give you the growth rate and the margin improvement because you're just a more efficient operation. um, your systems and your processes will dictate the speed at which you can go. You can have the greatest product vision, but if you don't have a good operating system behind it, you won't scale. You can have the greatest product, but if you don't understand how to deploy it or your team can't manifest that product the right way, it will fail. So you have to have the systems behind the vision. You have to have the systems behind the go to market in order to affect that scale. And that's what the system does.
Mr. Matthew, how do you maintain alignment during rapid scaling?
It's the feedback loop, the fourth eye. You have to have consistent measurement systems in place for both parties, both the individuals. Everyone always does measurement for the employees. How many companies are out there actually measuring themselves? Probably not that many, and they should. And it goes well beyond NPS scores. Look at customer surveys. Look at employee views of ourselves. You need to have a system in place for feedback loops, performance reviews, metrics, recognition systems. All these things factor into ensuring that you're actually staying aligned. That the things you said in the first three sides of the squares, that's identity, instruction, and intercommunication, that those things are being adhered to.
What's the most surprising industry where you've seen alignment done right?
I don't know if there's a uniformity in terms of an industry, but usually the places where you see a lot of alignment done well, I hate to say, are probably right now in industries that require a high degree of constraint. And again, a high degree of constraint is where employees have less freedom to actually enact their own ideas. And usually that's found in highly regulated industries or where compliance is necessary. Think hospitals, biopharma, manufacturing, because those products and services require that level of adherence to a system, or chaos will ensue, people may die. So those places by necessity end up having a really aligned system because they have to. But they may not, maybe unintentionally doing that. So there isn't one industry outside of that I would say specializes in this beyond the ones that are kind of forced into a high level of constraint by virtue of the industry they compete in.
Mr. Matthew, before we wrap up our discussion for today, I'm inviting you to please do listen to my other podcast, people. My other podcast, because my abstract essay is already in fifth season, abstract poetry in second season, and my book 101 review in fifth season too. Comedy 101 in second season, and my food 101 in fifth season as well. Geography 101 in fourth season, and my baby podcast Law 101 and Mental Health 101 and Love Letters in third season and Movie 101 Review and Music 101 in third season and Science 101 and Sex 101 in its first season. Please listen to them wherever you listen your podcast. So, Mr. Matthew, what's one small experiment listeners or viewers can run tomorrow to test their team's alignment?
The one small experiment they can do is to go and take the free quiz online and either do it from an individual perspective or from a corporate executive perspective and get a gut check on where they find themselves, on the spectrum of constrained independence. Again, it's not a binary number; it's a box, it's square. But take the time to go figure it out yourself where you sit. I think you'll surprise yourself. Townsquare-advisors.com is where you can do that, where the free quizzes are. And you can also sign up for an advanced copy of the forthcoming publication, The Culture of Alignment. You can also deep dive into the 40-point methodology and really get granular if you want to do that. But the free quizzes are a great place to start.
Helping the middle market create a capture enterprise value. Can you expound more on this phrase on your website?
Sure. A lot of people want to focus on the enterprise. I love the middle market. That's where the heartbeat of America is in these small, medium-sized businesses, and they're often underserved when it comes to systems like this. Again, my approach is designed to be actionable, that anyone can read or take the methodology and directly implement it. You can create enterprise value by virtue of a high-performing team. You can capture it in a process in a liquidity event, and so the goal here is to help people set themselves up for success wherever they may be in their company's life cycle, by virtue of better organizational design. You can either, as I said, use this as a diagnostic to fix your company, or you can use it as a tool to help structure your company in a more efficient way to get yourself ready for a sale process. And that's the whole point, is to get people in a better position.
Mr. Matthew Person, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and wisdom to the world. So can you please invite our listeners to support your advocacy, your business, or whatever projects that you're doing right now?
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
So where do people reach you, Mr. Matthew?
They can go online at townsquare-advisors.com and take the quizzes I mentioned, and that's the best place to start.
Yes, people, let's support Mr. Matthew Person because if you support him, for sure, more and more and more business that will align. So, Mr. Matthew, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Marticon people, see you soon.